All right, here we go. Touré, welcome back to Vlad TV.
Thanks, buddy.
It's been some years.
I think this is our third time doing this.
I think it is. I think it is. But, we've been in contact the whole time.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I just mean like doing one of these Vlad sit-downs.
Yeah, it's been a minute. But, I remember when I was going through some things, you reached out and, you helped counsel me through a few little roadblocks that I was dealing with. And, we're not going to say for what exactly, but
I respect that you were willing to listen.
Yeah.
Because, it's just human nature that if you have an idea, you stick with that idea. And new information does not make you change. It makes you drill down more into your idea.
Yeah.
And that you were willing to listen and enter the conversation in one place and truly hear and be moved to a different place, a different perspective. It was okay, well, that was cool. You know what I mean? You don't usually have that conversation where you talk to somebody and you're looking at it this way, you should look at it differently, and they go, oh yeah, you're right.
Well, I see where it comes from. If it's somebody that I know and I respect, and I know there's no ulterior motives
sure
in the conversation, then I'm willing to listen. And I try to avoid cognitive dissonance, where I get new information and then I try to work my original idea around that new information,
Which is natural.
Yeah.
It's natural.
Yeah, but I try to avoid doing that. So if I get new information and it does make sense, I try to internalize it. And when I'm wrong, I try to, accept the fact that I'm wrong. And if I have to publicly address that, then I try to publicly address it. Not everyone's always going to be happy with the way I address it, and that's okay. I'm not here to please everyone. I'm here to make sure that I can live with certain things myself. And if it feels a little off, then I'll address it. If I can live with it and it doesn't feel off, then I'll rock with it. And whoever feels a type of way will feel a type of way regardless.
For sure.
Yeah. There's a lot going on right now. Well, first of all, Big Meech is out.
Okay.
Yeah, from BMF.
Good.
Yeah. No interactions with him, I assume, over the years?
No, I've never interacted with him. I watched the show about them, but I don't really know anything about him.
Yeah, I had a very brief interaction with him. But, I did interview a lot of BMF people along the way, from J-Bo to Blue Da Vinci back in the day to a bunch of other guys. So, it's about to be crazy, especially with the show being what it is.
Okay.
But here's something that you do know about. Diddy.
For sure.
Yes. Diddy is currently facing life in prison. He's charged with sex trafficking, racketeering, and kidnapping. He, of course, has pleaded not guilty. What is surprising is that he didn't get bail. He didn't get a bond. Does that surprise you at all?
It didn't surprise me that he did not get bail because he has been actively tampering with witnesses, actively reaching out to witnesses and, presumably threatening them or asking them or bribing them to not. And I think the government rightly felt like this is a huge flight risk, for given what he's facing and the amount of money he has. Despite the recognizance, might he try to get on a plane or a submarine or something?
Tunnel?
Yeah, if you're facing life in prison, and you have a ton of money, how could you not? How could you not want to abscond?
Look, I've been saying this for months. If I was Diddy and I knew something like this was coming down the line, I would go buy a round-trip ticket to Russia and not use the return ticket.
Well,
I would just stay there.
I think part of the story is that he clearly did not judge the situation as it was coming to him. The game was going in a certain direction, and for various reasons, he could not see where it was going. I think almost anyone would see Cassie is privately making a lot of noise between my lawyer and her lawyer, right? And this is she's alleging a lot of things. She's asking for a lot of money in the real world, but not a lot of money to me, right? $30 million is not a ton to Puff. It's a ton to 99% of the population, but not to him.
30 million cash is a ton even to Puff.
It clearly was not a problem,
No,
right?
listen,
If you're going to pay it,
30 million is a lot.
if you're going to pay it the day after it becomes known, you should have paid it yesterday.
Well,
you had the money.
Well, he did have the money, yes.
And you could have staved off all of this. You could have changed the whole trajectory.
Correct.
Of just getting rid of the lawsuit. I'm not saying that justice is being served in the situation, but the way that the game was going, lots of people had things that they wanted to say about Puffy, but were afraid to say them. Cassie was showing courage, but she was like, I will go away for $30 million. I think 99% of us would see, I got $1 billion, let me just pay her and keep it quiet. But I think there's two big things that are sort of explain why not. This is a person who'd been surrounded by enablers for a long time. So nobody around him is giving him a critical eye to say, like, no, we shouldn't do that. He's dealing with at least 15 years of drug abuse, so he's not thinking clearly at all. But I think there's also a long-term sense of invincibility and, let's call it, leader privilege. He's been the boss of every situation he's been in since his early 20s, where you are basically living like a king, where everybody who interacts with you relies on you for their employment. And people who were around him for a long time talked about, they noticed that the inner circle had gone from people who might say, hey, I'm not sure that's the way we should do things. Maybe we should try something else. I have different ideas, to yes men and women. So, and that goes down to even like your attorneys, right? So you have attorneys who are not saying, hey, we should just pay this. Like the balance, the math is just pay it. And if he pays Cassie and her thing never becomes loud, many of the other people remain, it's too hard for them to come forward. And the whole story goes differently. And, you know, I think there's a lot of people who love to involve the Illuminati or the specter of the Illuminati as a way of understanding these stories.
Right.
And there's this thing going around about how, well, this is really about Puff standing up to Diageo,
right,
or
which is ridiculous.
Ciroc standing up to Diageo.
Yeah.
It's completely ridiculous. Puff does not own Ciroc.
Yeah.
Right? But also, this isn't about some wealthy liquor person made a call to somebody in the DOJ. No, Cassie's lawsuit was written about in detail in the New York Times and every other newspaper that matters. And you don't think that people at the DOJ were like, did you see this story? Oh my God, I just read 5 serious crimes in the first paragraph. Like
that is true. There's a lot of crimes,
Jack,
in that lawsuit.
I want you to dive into this story, see what's there.
Yeah.
And this is a potentially career-making moment for Jack at the DOJ.
100%.
This is about Cassie being heard from the law offices of Sean Combs to the DOJ, right? And you know, it's interesting how these things sort of loop together. It was explained to me that in Kim Porter passing, Puff was so distraught that he was distracted from every other part of his life. And because of that, Cassie was able to get away from him and fairly quickly get into a very serious, committed relationship and become pregnant and start planning a wedding. So now she is off on a whole other life. She goes to rehab. She goes to therapy. she finds the courage to say what she really believes. And she is encouraged to speak out because so many therapists are like, say your truth, right? Own your truth. Then she's like, I'm going to write a book and tell everything you did. And her speaking out then breaks the dam. And the amount of stories that we have heard about Puff is absolutely insane. You start to wonder, how could he have had enough time in the day
to do music or
to
movies?
be constantly running around, mistreating people, plus making music, plus, I mean, I don't, it does seem like a one-man crime wave.
Well, this situation actually hit close to home with you. So,
Oh my God.
you know where I'm going with this?
Yeah, no, I do. I mean, oh God.
Okay, so
I've told the story so many times.
but you're gonna, we'll
no,
go over it
we-
on Vlad TV.
No. I've told the story too many times. This story's too old.
Okay, well, you and Diddy were close enough where you had each other's numbers and you could reach out to him and so forth at one point.
I mean, I'll tell you this. So when they were doing the Bad Boys for Life song and video, and there's a line in there where he says, "Don't worry if I write rhymes, I write checks."
Yes.
And as a hip hop purist, I took offense to that line. You are bragging that other people are writing your rhymes and you're paying them for ghostwriting? Like, at least pretend. But, I was offended that he was talking about it and bragging about it. So I was writing a review of that album for Rolling Stone. And there was a line in the review that said, that said, like, basically, that was whack. How could you say that? Now, for some reason, I had sent it in, and it was too late for me to do anything about it. It was already on the way to the publisher or printer. And I was talking to somebody in the music business on the phone, and for some reason, that came up. And I said that was whack, and I had just written something about that, saying that was whack of him. And I shouldn't have done that, but that was stupid. I was young. So dumb. And we hung up, and not 10 minutes later, Puff is calling me. So this person was like, and hung up and immediately called him. Yo, Touré said, he's calling me. And I saw the sort of full Puff thing in this story. Because first he was like nice and cool. Hey, Playboy, how you doing? Can you take that? What did you write? Can you take? And I'm very awkward to I don't want to discuss the article I wrote with you. I'm not going to tell you what I wrote, but I thought that line was whack. And he's being nice. Like, can you take that out? And I could never go to Rolling Stone and say, hey, Diddy asked me to take a line out of my review about, like, no, that's insane. I could never do that. I would never do that. And I'm like, hip hop purist. I'm like, no, that was whack. Like, what you said was whack. So then he starts to get upset and he's yelling at me. And I do remember him saying, I will end your career. And I was like, I don't even have any idea how you would do that. So I'm not employed by you. I don't need you for my employment. So,
I will buy Rolling Stone and fire you.
You know what I mean? So, I mean, it just kind of went over my head of like, yeah, sure, like, whatever. So he's kind of screaming and yelling at me, very angry, and I'm kind of like dissociated because I'm like, whoa, like, what is happening? And then it kind of calms down, and he's like, back to nice. So, can you help me out here? And I'm like, still no. So the call ends, And it was like 2 weeks later, I got an invitation to a white party in the Hamptons. Now,
A Diddy white party.
Yeah.
Yes.
And now I thought that meant that we were cool. Like, we had this interaction, I stood my ground and he's like, cool, whatever, like come to the party. I get to the party, you had to drop off your car in one location and get on a bus.
Yeah.
And they bus you to the mansion and you get off the little white bus and there's these Victoria's Secret models wearing like wings and a halo and handing you champagne and they're like, welcome to heaven. Okay. So I get in and Andre Harrell is there and Andre Harrell was my man, right? And we got on thick as thieves like every time we saw each other. And he was like, watch out for the pop brownies. And he was giving me like a good warning, like, take it easy on the pop brownies. Now, I'm like, yo, I smoke every day, nigga. Like, I don't need your warning. And I'm like, you probably don't smoke that often, like once in a while. And I'm like in this smoking life at that point in my life. So I took it as like a challenge, like, what? Like, step aside. And I scarfed down 2 of them real quick. And, he was right. Good 20 minutes later, I'm like zonked. Like the room is kind of spinning and I'm like, wow, there's a lot in these brownies. Like, fuck, I shouldn't have eaten 2. And this is right when Puff had just started dating J-Lo. So it wasn't publicly known. They weren't publicly admitting it. But they were there together at the party. And I remember sitting down somewhere because I'm like, wow, this party is like spinning right around me. And he came and sat down right next to me and J-Lo was right next to him. And he's staring at me and he's like, you fucked up. How could you say that about me? Because now he had seen it in print. And he's giving it to me. And it was not a setup because it was not a public dressing down. Like if you saw us, you would just think we were talking, right? So nobody's hearing him yell at me. It was not public.
Except for J-Lo, of course.
J-Lo is sitting next to him and looking at me like with these eyes like, yeah, you suck. I don't even
know what you say about my boyfriend.
I don't even know if you know like what's going on. Like, are you saying? Because the review was mostly positive, right?
Yeah.
We was just beefing about one line in the review. So he's giving it to me. I can't really say anything because there's not much going on here because the pop brownies, I'm like a zombie. So, that finished. It was a nice time. It was a G-rated nice party with a lot of music industry people, club people. There was no inference that even now looking back that like, well, there was a secondary party going on or if you stayed after such and such time or, because I swear, Andre or somebody around him would have said to me, like, if you want to get down, you should stay. If you don't want to get down, you should go, right? Because he warned me about the brownies. So he would have told me like, you should probably go by like 8 o'clock or something. Or like, you want to have a party, you should stick around. Like he would have said that to me, right? Or one of the crew would have said, so I don't think that anything was attached to that particular white party that year. Or at least not on that day.
Well, I remember this one time when, remember the Cassie nude photos leaked out? This was around maybe 2009 or so.
No, I don't remember
Cassie. Yeah, this was a thing. This was Cassie naked with like her legs spread open and she had like nipple rings and stuff like that. And back then when you just posted whatever you grabbed, I was one of the sites that posted it. And I remember my man Sean Prez, who worked for Diddy for a long time, called me up and was like, Diddy wants to have a phone call with you. And I'm like, I'm not taking this phone call. He's like, you don't want to talk to Puff? I'm like, no, because he's going to yell at me over the phone over this picture. Why would I pick up the phone and have a grown man yell at me? Because I'm going to start yelling back, and next thing you know, we're going to escalate things, and what's the point? I'm not taking the phone call. He goes, all right. A few hours later, I get a phone call from Steve Rifkin. Now, at the time, Vlad TV was at SRC Records in the Universal Building, so I was kind of under the SRC umbrella. So Steve was like...
Can't not take Steve's call.
So I had to take Steve's call, right? So he gets on the phone. He's like, okay, so Puff just yelled at me for the last 15 minutes about this photo on your website. Can you please take it down? I said, sure, Steve, I'll take it down. And that was the end of...
So you got out of being yelled at. Okay.
I got out of being yelled at, but in turn, I got Steve Rifkin yelled at. You know what's interesting also is I interviewed Elliot Wilson recently, and he told me a story about his wife, Danielle Smith.
I heard that story.
You heard this story. And she wrote about it, I believe, in the Washington Post. New York Times. Yeah, I forgot which paper it was. Where she was the editor-in-chief of Vibe, and they did a photo shoot that Diddy was on, for a cover, and he wanted to see it, and it was against Vibe policy to let people see the covers before they're out. So he showed up and threatened to kill her. Yeah. To the point where security had to walk her out, and then their servers disappeared.
She kind of ran out.
Oh.
She didn't walk, she ran out of the building.
Oh, okay.
I only know the story from the New York Times.
Okay, yeah. Well, I talked to Elliot. He goes, hey, man, she said it. I believe her. It's true.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
Why did Puffy have this sort of precarious relationship with media?
Why did he have a precarious relationship with media?
From your point of view.
I mean, I don't know that he did have a precarious relationship with media.
Well, yelling at someone over one line in an article multiple times is kind of precarious.
I mean, look. He is a violent person who clearly was violent to all sorts of people.
Right, the Steve Stout situation. Remember he hit him with a champagne bottle?
UCLA.
What happened there?
Got into a fight with one of the coaches when Justin was a player there.
Really? I missed this part of the
story. Got arrested. For
what, beating up the coach?
You could call it that, yeah. More or less that, yeah. So, he was a violent person, clearly.
With men and women.
With men and women, in the industry, out of the industry, media, whatever. Yeah.
Well, there's a whole bunch of lawsuits now. This one lawyer claims 120 people have a class action lawsuit against Diddy. And there's a new one which is actually very interesting. What's that?
It's not class action.
Oh, 120 people?
Yes, it's 120 separate individual suits that he is taking care of.
Oh, okay. They're not suing together.
Right.
Oh, okay. Right. That number seems kind of ridiculous. Exactly 120 people.
Well, it's more than 120 now, but there are other attorneys who also have clients with stories
Right. Well, there's a new one where a man is suing Diddy and Macy's for sexual assault. I guess at the time he worked for Echo, which is a rival clothing company when Sean John was up and running. You know about this story?
Yeah, yeah.
He claims that Diddy face fucked him in the back of a Macy's. While his security watched.
The whole thing is kind of absurd because there's so many stories of just blatant, aggressive, sociopathic behavior. But there are consistent things that you see over and over, this sense of entitlement from Puff that I can do anything to anyone. Somebody else who knew him for a long time used the word sociopath, and I had not made that connection until they pointed it out to me. And then I was like, oh my God, you don't seem to care about other people being hurt. You don't seem to care about stepping on other people to get what you want. You don't seem to care about lying to people. Because there was apparently this sexual quid pro quo, right, that you also see over and over, that this notion of, if you want to be a singer, a rapper, a writer, a producer, somebody in my circle, in the bad boy world, Sean John, whatever, well, you also got to participate in this stuff too, right? And you got to do both. And if you don't do both, then you can't. So it's this quid pro quo, which is why they're bringing in the businesses in all these lawsuits. But it's sort of this classic entertainment industry thing of like, you know, you gotta please the boss in order to become famous, which is kind of insane. And you also see consistently, he is controlling people's bodies, either by the influence that he has. I could control your career. So if you want to become a star, then you have to do what I want. Or I am physically incapacitating you by giving you drugs, either through drink, quite often through drink, sometimes through smoke, but also through the baby oil. There's times when people are discussing he's putting horse tranquilizer in the baby oil. So when he gets the baby oil on you, this sounds insane. It sounds like I'm talking about
there's a
movie.
lawsuit claiming that, you know, there was GHB in the baby oil, but this is just a lawsuit. This is not a criminal case at this time. This is just allegations based on people who are suing him for money. So you have to take that into account.
Well, yes, but if you are an attorney, you cannot knowingly bring a false claim.
There are so many attorneys who knowingly bring false claims. Lil Rod's attorney, I believe, has gotten sanctioned over this type of thing.
I don't know anything about that. And Rod has had 2 attorneys now, so I don't know which one even you're referring to.
Like, so some of these, like I went through the Lil Rod lawsuit. He literally like put up pictures in the lawsuit claiming that like this is Stevie J engaging in gay sex, and the actual gay male porn star came forward and said, "No, this is actually one of my movies. This is not Stevie."
Well, I mean, I've seen it. I mean, I saw that picture.
Right. It's not Stevie J.
Looks like him to me.
But it's not. The actual person who it is him is come forward.
I mean, I don't know. There's tremendous detail in that suit.
I don't know about that lawsuit. One thing you said, which is interesting, you said that, you know, Cassie had been working on an album for 10 years and he used this as a pacifier. Diddy used this as a pacifier, you know, for her freak-offs. Now, I'll say this. I know someone who worked at Bad Boy during the whole time that Cassie was there. And he told me point blank, and this is not someone who's part of a lawsuit. He's not pro-Diddy, against Diddy. This is just a friend of mine, you know, who I have a long relationship with. And he said that when Cassie was on the label, when she had a song that looked like it might react, she was treated with the same fervor that any other artist on the label was treated. They would send the song to radio. They would put her on promo tours. The songs, at the end of the day, just never picked up outside of the first song, Me and You.
I had a producer talking about they made 50 songs in 2010. She had 3 singles in 2012.
She had a bunch of singles.
No more singles until 2017. But there was never a title and never a release date. This was never meant to come out.
If you don't have follow-up songs that don't react, you're not going to get an album. I think in this particular sense, I know that everyone wants to paint Cassie as the victim and everything. I think in this particular case,
this is not her first album. You got to make the album. You got to let me.
But if the songs, listen, Me and You was the single that was there before Puffy even signed her, right?
Okay.
The song came out, it went viral on its own, just her and Ryan Leslie grinding independently. Puffy signed her, and then when it was time for a second single, none of the songs ever reacted. Could we just say that maybe Cassie is not a talented musical artist, and it is what it is? I mean, not everyone that gets into the musical industry does not become successful. There's very few stars out there. And a lot of people, if they get a hit song, most of the time, they never followed up with anything. That's just how life works. Not everyone's Mary J. Blige.
I'm not.
Not everyone is Whitney Houston.
There's a world full of people who are not them. No one's suggesting that. We know as part of his entire quid pro quo scheme that Cassie was given a project to work on, but it was never really meant to come out.
You would say that from your point of view. But I'm talking about from someone who was actually there at Bad Boy, and they legitimately tried to push these singles, and radio just wasn't feeling it. The fans weren't feeling it. Not everyone is a music star. Some people just luck up on a song, and they could tour off it for the rest of the world, for the rest of their life, and they're happy to do that. Not everyone's going to have a body of work that people react to over and over again. Can you honestly say that, wow, Cassie is just such a talented singer? Like, she's the next Christina Aguilera. She's the next Whitney Houston. Or did she just have a cool little jingle that reacted, mostly thanks to Ryan Leslie, who was in a serious relationship with her at the time, and he's a talented guy in his own right. They came up with something that worked. They weren't able to recreate that, and she was given a lot of chances. She had a lot of features. She worked with a lot of different people, but none of the songs ever reacted.
I know that she worked on an album for 10 years. That is an extraordinary amount of studio time.
Yeah.
So you're spending upwards of $10 million?
I don't know about $10 million.
If you record for 10 years,
Diddy owned his own studio, Daddy's house. He was probably there most of the time. That's his own studio.
But there's engineers there.
How much do engineers get paid?
Songwriters. There's people,
$50,000 a year. Yeah.
But there's producers and songwriters.
Right.
She had features from real artists, so they had to pay them.
Let me put it like this:
real producers.
From my point of view, if that was not Diddy's girlfriend, she would have gotten dropped from the label probably after the first year. I think she was given more opportunity because of their relationship.
Yes, but that looks at it as a legitimate project. It's not a legitimate project. Yes, she stays on the label because she's his girlfriend, because he wants her to stick around and do the nighttime shit.
And she probably wants to do it too, and she's given an opportunity because she is the girlfriend.
I would never consider... I think
it goes both ways, man.
I would never talk about her motivations. And I know I would never talk about her feelings or motivations. I would never even think about that. I know that label spent a lot of time and a lot of money with a lot of employees giving her chances. There's no way
that never
all these people just couldn't come up with anything for her.
You're talking about music. That's not an accurate statement.
No,
that's not an accurate statement. You know music. You're a purist. You understand how this shit works, especially on the singing side. A rapper is easier to get a hit
sometimes.
But you're
acting like this is a meritocracy, right? Bad singers make it sometimes. Good singers don't make it sometimes. This is not like, well, if you make quality records, there's times when we as an audience need to hear a record over and over before we become acculturated to it, right? So if the gatekeepers, radio, MTV, are like pushing a record, that can almost make it popular.
Right, but they usually have to start with a strong record.
But we also have a situation where this sexual quid pro quo is happening with multiple people, not just her. If she was the only one...
What other artists on the label were sleeping with Diddy in exchange for studio time?
I think that the arrangement is more complicated than that. It's not quite that simple.
Diddy was only doing this with Cassie. And to further prove my point.
You seriously think that Diddy was only doing this with Cassie? And like...
At the label, yes.
But was
he doing it with Total? Was he doing it with Faith Evans? She wasn't on the label, but she was affiliated. I mean, like...
we have...
There really were not a lot of female acts on the label, period, outside of Cassie.
It's for one, it's bizarre to me that you still think of him as just doing this to women. That's bizarre, because we are way past that.
There has been a lot of gay rumors and so forth. I'm not sure if that's true or not. I'm not sure. There's a story,
there's tons of
that we're not going to talk about, but
there's tons of complaints on the record from men. Lots of them.
Civil suits. I haven't heard of any criminal complaints of men against Diddy. Haven't heard that yet. I've never heard of a man saying
a civil suit is not lesser. We have
it is lesser.
Lots of people.
It is lesser. There's a much lower tolerance to actually win a civil lawsuit than a criminal lawsuit. A criminal lawsuit is beyond a shadow of a doubt. 90%, 95%.
Right.
Civil lawsuit is more probable than not. 51%.
But if something happened one time then you could argue that this is an aberration. If something happens over and over and over and over, it's clearly not an aberration. We have seen many, many times that this person operating a quid pro quo, right? Not just with Cassie, with many, many, many other people, right? We see this
sexually.
Yeah, we see this discussed in complaint after complaint after complaint. That is one of the big consistencies that we see over and over.
Listen, I'm not trying to defend Diddy, but I also have to be a voice of reason sometimes, you know, and I'm not a huge fan of pylons. You know, I mean, I want to separate the actual truth from what everyone else is saying with civil lawsuits. Anyone can file a civil lawsuit. I could say that you touched me inappropriately before the interview started, and I could file a lawsuit, and we can go through the whole process, and you can be found not guilty. You see what I'm saying? If I have a lawyer that wants to take it on contingency, anyone can file. But, you know, at the end of the day, for example, like going back to Cassie, if Cassie was a very talented artist, why was there no other labels that wanted to pick her up after she left Bad Boy? There was no bidding war over Cassie. Like, you know what I'm saying? She could have potentially taken all those records.
When she left Bad Boy in, what, 2018 or 2020?
Right.
When she hadn't made an album for Bad Boy?
Right.
You don't see the issue there. That you were at Bad Boy for 10 years and you never released an album because you were never supposed to, but you never released an album.
But if you're,
so you want a different label?
If you're talented, then
when I was 20 and young.
She's still young. What is she, 30 now? That's not that old.
As far as the music business?
That's not that old for the music business.
As far as the music business?
As long as you still have your looks and you take care of yourself.
One
at
artist
30, you could still be a bona fide star.
One artist explained to me that having a record deal is like a bank loan.
Yeah.
And like they have loaned you a certain amount of money. Now, and you pay it back through your record sales. Now, if you should, for some reason, go through your record deal and not release an album, then you have a problem because you have negative credit.
Right.
So every other label is like, why didn't you release an album? And if you were there 2 years, maybe we could figure out a story. You were there 10 years and you didn't release an album, and now you're 30, and I'm looking at the 20. You could say it's not that old. I'm looking at the 20-year-olds who just arrived in town, who are hot and young and fresh. They're in the middle. They're in the club scene.
They don't already have a hit song like Cassie had
from 2006.
And already
2006 doesn't help you in 2024.
Some level of name recognition and face recognition based on all the time she was on the red carpet and everything else like that. That's all I'm saying.
Vlad, Cassie's career has been ruined and spoiled by Diddy.
I disagree.
And he wasted her time.
I disagree.
In the prime of her life with this ridiculous scheme that she didn't really want to do. It was like, the album is fake just to get you to do this other shit, just to be my girlfriend and to do this other shit.
I disagree. I think that, like I said, if she was any girl off the street, she gets signed off a song. Look at G Depp. Perfect example. G Depp had a certain amount of street buzz. He has some records that were reacting in New York, like DJ Premier was working with him. He gets signed to Bad Boy. He has Get This Money, right? He has a hit song. He doesn't follow it up with anything. Eventually he gets let go from the label. And then, he falls into drugs and eventually admits to killing a man from years ago and goes to prison. But this happens all the time. A label signs someone, they have a spark of something, they can't follow it up with anything. Black Rob had a huge song, couldn't follow it up with anything. Ultimately, these people get dropped from the label, they go on.
None of these people had 10 years of making...
And Cassie got more chances than every other artist on the label because of the relationship with Diddy. He kept putting money into studios.
It's hysterical that you still think
you can look at it differently.
It's hysterical that you think this is a real album. It's a real artist deal.
Listen, my man told me she had a song, and she had like that song, "Long Way to Go." That did a little something. It didn't get big, but it did a little something, and they really promoted it. They really pushed it.
It's funny.
But you can't take a song that's mediocre and turn it into a mega smash, no matter how much promo you put into it.
Are you kidding me? You can't take a mediocre song and turn it into, there's mediocre songs that become mega smashes all the time. What are you talking about? You think the music industry is a meritocracy?
The people
who win are great singers and they're great songs and like
and they usually get one chance. Like the Gangnam Style guy. You ever heard from him again? Party Like a Rock Star. You ever hear from them again? Like lots of people. Vanilla Ice had a monster song. He never really followed it up with anything. But he still had a monster song and built his fortune around it. Shit happens, but you can't. Why did all these other people who have monster songs never have a follow-up when they were on fire at the time? If people don't take to it, people don't take to it. You can't cram mediocre music down people's throats and expect them to just take to it every time. Every so often it does happen, but in general, the label says, listen, we've done what we could do. But she was given a lot of chances. She got to work with Kid Cudi. She got to work with this producer. You know how the Kid Cudi shit worked out.
She got to work with Kid Cudi.
Yeah, and then they started a relationship.
You're way in left field on this.
You're then, his car blew up. They started dating, and his car got blown up. Well, recently, and you commented on this, I was on Piers Morgan's show along with Jaguar Wright and this lawyer lady whose name I forget. And I was the only voice of reason on this. Jaguar Wright goes into this whole tirade of Jay-Z and Beyonce kidnap people and put them on planes unconscious and so forth. And I was the one that said she's a conspiracy theorist. I've never had her on my show. I had no plans on it. She just makes up stuff, or she just, retells things that she hears on the internet. And of course, everyone gets mad at me and, protect Jaguar at all costs. Everything she says is true. But you actually had a nice little rant about this. You called her the crazy drunk auntie.
I mean, look, when Jaguar Wright was on the YouTube side streets of conspiracy theory alley in the internet and popping up when you want to go down to that sort of way of that's fine. That's fine, right? And, whatever number of people who want that content can go get it. But when you put her on a mainstream adjacent platform like Piers Morgan online, right? Not the real Piers. I think that was the first time a lot of people realized, Piers Morgan does not actually have a network show anymore. He has a YouTube show.
Right. It's a very popular YouTube show, though.
Right, but it looked like a network show, he's been on network. I don't live in England, so I'm not aware that he lost his network job and now he's got a YouTube job.
Yeah, shout out to Piers Morgan. I've been on the show like 5 times. I'm a regular on the show.
Shouting out to Piers Morgan. You shout out him on your own fucking time. So that became untenable for the Carters, right?
Yes.
But the issue is that Jaguar does not have areas of vulnerability the way Piers Morgan does, right? Jaguar is something that a lot of attorneys would refer to as lawsuit proof, right? She doesn't have a lot of money. That's not a diss, right? That's
you can't sue someone who's broke.
She doesn't have a lot of money. She does not have a boss who can tell her you have to stop or else. And celebrities can't just sue every person who says something about them, right?
Right.
Now, when you go to Piers Morgan and he platforms you, well, now we have somebody who has a boss, Rupert Murdoch, and has some money. So if we sue you, we could actually change your life.
Yes.
And now, I don't need to see Jaguar's hand, right, the cards in her hand, to know that she knows she's not telling the truth. Because as soon as Piers Morgan got a letter from the Carter's attorney saying, either cut that out or we will see you in court, where you will be asked to prove that what you platformed is true.
Yeah.
And he immediately shut it down.
Yeah, and publicly apologized.
Now, if Jaguar said, what I'm saying is true, and I can prove it, then it's like, then the two of them especially are like, let's go to court against the big bad Jay-Z and Beyonce. We can prove that we're right on the world stage.
Yes.
We finally got the fight we were looking for.
We got videos of the kids on the plane being drugged.
You know what I mean? I mean, like, Piers
everything.
and Jaguar especially would love and would get so much out of, we sued them back. We fought them in court. We had the truth on our side. We fought against the Illuminati Carters. Instead, they immediately folded.
Yes.
I mean,
As they should.
My question is, what did Piers know and when did he know it? Did he know that she was full of shit when they were talking?
Absolutely.
Or did he realize it when he got a letter from the Carter's attorney?
He knew exactly when it was happening. Look, and I've been on Pierce's show 4 or 5 times. They call me to speak on whatever hip hop events. And when they hit me and said, hey, we want you to be on the show, at first I couldn't do it, but then they scheduled for a later date again. I was able to do that one. They sent me the panel, and I saw Jaguar Wright's name, and I was about to respond and say, I'm not going to do this panel. Like, I'm not going to be on the same panel as this crazy person. But then I'm like, all right, I'm going to do it, but if she says something crazy, I'm going to address it, which is what I did. Exactly what I did, which, of course, was followed up by Jaguar doing an interview claiming that I'm Mossad,
Well, that's true.
But
here's
Israeli
the thing.
Secret Service.
The thing I'm wondering, when the letter comes from Jay-Z's attorneys,
Yeah,
and that letter is scary,
I'm sure it is.
right? Like, we're going to take you to court. They got money. Like, oh, that letter gets you straight, like
Yes.
clarity, like sobriety, like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Does he call Jaguar and say, hey,
No, he does not.
was that stuff you said true?
No,
do you have any proof? Or does he like, ooh, she's full of shit, let's get on the air and apologize right away?
That's exactly what happened.
Does he, I mean, and if he doesn't even need to check with her, like, oh, she was doing a bit. We didn't mean, we can't prove any of this shit. But if she had the goods,
Which she does not.
with or without Piers, this is the fight you've wanted. Now you can have a fair public fight in a court of law and prove 100%, look what I said is true. And there's a lot of people who believe her, and I think that's really sad. And I think that is similar to the acceptance of misinformation that we see on the right with MAGA folks who repeat things that are completely untrue. They're eating dogs and cats in Springfield, Ohio. They are not, right? 15 million immigrants, they have not. But they are believing and shaping their world around misinformation that they picked up online. And the people who believe Jaguar are doing the same thing. And I'm not saying they're Trumpy. I'm saying they're having the same relationship to misinformation, that they're accepting it as true. And it is not true. And if she had the goods, this was a situation where she could have proven herself and risen to a whole other level in society.
Right.
Right? But no, she does not have the goods. The moment, one of the things that made me laugh really hard when she said that she was walking people out of freak-offs. When the conversation about freak-offs first happened, there were several instances online when younger people asked me, have you been to a Diddy party? As if all Diddy parties were Caligula or Eyes Wide Shut. And I'm like, I've been to a million Diddy parties. I went to his 40th birthday party at Cipriani. I went to the white party. I went to other parties I don't even remember. All of us did. He threw lots and lots of parties. If you were in New York hip hop in the 90s and the 00s, you went to lots of his parties. There's not anything weird going on at any party that I went to or heard about. So you had to be of special status to get to the freak off. Like, we gotta know, we know him or her, we trust them, they are down, they have passed a test. It wasn't just anybody, come on, let's go have a wild thing. Like, you gotta. So now, if she got in at all, even once, she would have had to prove, I am cool, I am down with you guys, right? She can't just walk in off the strength of, I had a single 10 years ago, or even last year. Like, you gotta. So I don't even believe that you even got in. But if you were to disrupt the story the situation in some way. You took a girl and you walked out. Well, that would be the end of you coming in. You couldn't do it twice. Like, what are you talking about?
I mean, the fact that you're trying to justify a random Jaguar Wright lie,
but it'd be like any,
but trying to justify your point. I mean, she also said that Jay-Z had Big L killed. They also, what else she say?
I mean,
they killed Aaliyah to make way for Beyonce.
When Beyonce was 17
right.
and not with Jay-Z.
Right. Well, what else? They were, she claimed that 50 Cent had sex with 2 men in prison. There was some weird shit she said about Joe Budden that he laughed off. Like I said, I'm Israeli Secret Service.
Well, that one's true.
That one's true.
I know.
Right.
Stop gaslighting us about that
these
one.
Platforms that are, listen, I'm considering that I'm Jewish and what's happening right now, with Hamas, I feel very scared that she's making lies about me, claiming that I'm Israeli Secret Service. This actually puts my life at risk. I'm going to have to get extra security, and I think I'm going to have to sue that platform that she actually said it on, out of fear, out of my own life. Because you can sue a platform. You can't sue someone who lives in a U-Haul van that doesn't return it and then gets arrested. That's what happened to Jaguar Wright, just so you know.
I heard that.
Didn't she smoke her dead son's ashes also? And
I didn't hear that.
There's this weird rock video where there's this weird voodoo trance that she's going into. There's really a lot of craziness.
Keep going, bruh.
Well, you did a lot of writing about Kanye and his current situation.
Okay.
So he's in Japan right now.
Yeah.
Allegedly working on an album completely by himself, producing it himself, rapping on himself, all in a hotel room.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
I mean, it's not alleged. Kanye is living in Tokyo. He has a level of peace there that is not possible in America and some other places, as far as that is not a culture where they just talk to strangers. So he can walk around, go to a wrestling match, go to a restaurant, go to wherever he wants to go, and he's not sort of besieged. And the paparazzi thing that he gets into in LA and a little bit in New York does not happen. And he is living in a hotel, probably a pretty high-end hotel, but like the room where he sleeps is where they're making the album, and it's just him and an engineer. I think really importantly, he wants to be the sole producer on this album. And for a long time, I think it's been appropriate to view him as part of a team, right? Yes. Like Kanye has producers who are helping him on different things.
Writers.
He has rappers who are writers who are helping him with the lyrics, right? He makes a lot of decisions. He sets a big vision. He's obviously, just because you made a beat for me doesn't mean I didn't do it. I said yes to that beat, right? I mean, curating is an important
Executive
part
producer
of art.
Is the term, yeah.
But this time it's like, no, it's just me, right? I'm going to be on the machines. I'm going to be producing. I'm not taking ideas from other people. I'm going to be just writing. He might be the only rapper on the project. I think this sounds really interesting for someone who has not had a good album in several years.
This is true.
And,
Vultures was okay.
Vultures is okay. I mean, I say this is somebody who really loved the music for a long time.
Yeah.
Grew up with him, listening. I didn't grow up with him. I watched him grow up, right? And was into him from the first album. Somebody who has grown and changed musically in a really interesting way over time. But the last sort of batch of albums, that's 3-4 albums or so, been meh.
Yeah.
So I'm like, would love to see you make a compelling album. It would be an interesting challenge, right? If Kanye made a compelling album, because I am deeply offended by the many, many, many things that he has said and done over recent years. From Slavery's a Choice to all the Hitler stuff, the Nazi stuff, the Alex Jones stuff, all the general anti-Semitic stuff, which is not just what he said, but also he watched Kanye was right or is right become a right-wing meme, right? That the Nazis can just say that. They can say that in public, right? They can't say real Nazi stuff in public, but they can say that and people understand what they mean. And he did not come out and say, no, stop that immediately. Never did that, which is weird. So I don't know if I am prepared to just love a Kanye album. Like, right, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, but like, I'm sorry, he was offensive to Taylor Swift, right? It was rude, right? But it's
Still
not
a great
like,
album, yeah.
It's not like praising Hitler, right? Like I was able to get past, he was rude and obnoxious to Taylor Swift in public, and then he makes this great album, right? This is like, you're pro-Hitler, you're anti-Semitic, you're saying all these kind of anti-black stuff, you're pro-Trump, and now you want me to just rock with your new album? Like, I don't know if I can do that. I will listen to Kanye because I am curious about what he does. But I think as a journalist, I can listen to it and also hold in mind I'm offended by you personally. And so I'm assessing what you've done musically while also going like, yeah, but you're like, he still hasn't dealt with that stuff. Like publicly, like,
I mean, he has somewhat apologized. There was the, there's the Hebrew apology and stuff like that. He's somewhat touched on that.
That apology was super weak sauce.
Well,
and it was not. It didn't get anywhere near the level of hurt that a lot of people felt from years of comments, multiple comments on multiple platforms. It wasn't a slip of the tongue. This is what I believe.
No, it was intentional. Now, he's being sued by his former assistant, who's now claiming that she was drugged at a Diddy party.
Yeah.
As well as all types of inappropriate text messages and everything else like that.
I don't know about that. I mean, I read about it. I don't know anything about that that anybody else doesn't know.
Yeah. And, I remember it was funny because me and Dion Cole were talking about, because he's from Chicago also, and he knows Kanye. I said, how do you feel about Kanye parading his wife essentially naked everywhere they go? And he goes, that's billionaire behavior. That's something we all aspire to. You got to be a billionaire to be able to pull something like this off.
If I had $1 billion, I would.
That's billion-dollar behavior is what you're saying.
That's billion-dollar behavior.
Billion-dollar behavior.
Don't even try to understand it.
Right. If you're making it, if you're a 9-to-5 guy,
don't even try to understand.
Right.
The 9-to-5 motherfuckers can't have their girl with their breasts out.
That's a good point.
You can't do that.
Right.
That's billionaire behavior.
I saw this, there was this podcast that jumped up on my TikTok feed, 2 women talking about being women in the dating scene. And one of them said, men don't want an equal. They are like exotic bird collecting. So they look at try to find like a woman who's like an exotic bird and then like collect her. And I don't know if that's accurate, although part of it was like, wow, that seemed like did kind of hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, I'm not against that statement actually.
You know what I mean?
Look at my past, yeah.
There is definitely some
There's something there to it.
And I don't want to condemn every relationship because there's plenty of guys who like really love their wives or whatever, but like the Kanye example of like, I'm always out in public with Bianca and she's wearing nothing.
Nothing.
It does give that notion of, is that like, exotic bird collecting? Like.
Yeah. And apparently they're saying that she would basically coordinate his versions of freak-offs, and they're saying that he gets male porn stars for her and everything. So it's going to be interesting to see if he's going to follow in the Diddy footsteps at some point where a bunch of people are going to sue him and say that things were done against their will and there were drugs involved or whatever else. It's a weird world we're living in right now, man. People can't have private sexual lives anymore. It all gets blown out.
Oh, Vlad. The takeaway of the Diddy story is not people can't have private sexual lives. Are you kidding? That is not the story here.
It's part of the story.
No, it's not.
It's part of the story.
No, not even 1%. What the fuck are you talking about? No, not even a little bit. No,
Listen, I don't fully agree with everything that's in this lawsuit. At the end of the day,
which one?
Well,
we're talking about like 130 at this point.
Well, Most of the lawsuits.
Actually, more than that.
I think most
More
lawsuits,
than that.
Most of the lawsuits are probably going to get thrown out, or they're going to get settled for pennies on the dollar. And at the end of the day,
I don't know that.
The only thing that I'm really
that was a weird dismissal of like 100 plus lawsuits.
The only thing I'm really concerned about is exactly what the criminal charges are going to be and what exactly he's going to fight in court. And it seems like they've touched on that, but they haven't really revealed all the information in the case in terms of, okay, here's our evidence. Because I think his lawyer filed some sort of motion to not let everything hit the media the way it has been. So I think a lot of this stuff is now going to be under wraps.
They're trying that. I mean,
yeah. He has a new appeal to try to get him out. I mean, at this point,
a fourth one?
No, a third one.
We already lost the third one.
No, we didn't lose the third one. We lost it, 2 of them.
No, the third one already passed.
The third one passed?
Yeah, he already lost.
Oh.
Not getting out. He's not getting out.
He's going to stay in jail. Okay. Hey, listen, it is what it is. It is what it is at this point. You called Elon Musk dumb.
I called Elon Musk dumb? Yes, for sure.
I would say this is one of the smartest people on the planet. Elon Musk.
That's
easy.
funny.
This man launches rockets, reusable rockets.
What has he said that you were like, oh, wow, that was really smart?
No, what has he done?
No.
I'm not looking at said. I don't care about said.
I care about said.
People troll all day long.
I can tell.
I've said lots of dumb stuff. I'm actually smart.
I mean, right away, I mean, I can first hear your intelligence in what you say, right? We can also assess it in what you do, but also if I'm not there, I can't know how much did you have to do with that, right? Because we think that he created Tesla. He did not.
He bought Tesla.
He bought
but
Tesla.
It was a failing company that he brought to massive heights. I've owned 4 Teslas.
Yeah, but is he known as an engineer or a businessman?
I think he's seen as a visionary.
He's seen as an engineer.
He's a CEO.
But you just named a business success, right? But we're like, the average person thinks he created Tesla. Right?
It doesn't matter if you create it or not.
No. But that is.
If Vlad TV was a small little, pocket company, and I took it and turned it.
I gotta go soon. This is what you want to argue about? Whether or not Elon Musk is intelligent? I look at Elon taking over Twitter, which is a company that I was deeply involved in.
Yes, that was definitely a failure.
Twitter.
Definitely a failure.
Well, it's not.
I agree.
I'm not even looking at it as an overall failure.
Well, you could tell by the market cap, it's worth 25% of what he bought it for. So you could say that's a failure.
Every single decision that he has made has been bad, and I'm kind of like.
Every single decision, SpaceX, Tesla,
no,
all those
within
are bad
Twitter.
decisions.
Every decision within Twitter has
100%.
been bad. Every single one.
100%. I didn't think he was going to buy it.
Which I'm saying, like, that's a company that I was closely involved with using it and trying to understand the information as what was going on after he took over. Every decision, I mean, like, you think about, being a dictator running a company and being a dictator of a country are different. But you think about, someone like Fidel Castro, give everybody good education, give everybody health care, right? Mussolini made the trains run on time. So when you get this sort of a dictator figure, they give you something that's like, well, everybody can go, well, that is good. That made our life better, right? He cut through bureaucracy to immediately give us. Elon, you did nothing. Every decision you made with Twitter was wrong and bad and made the experience worse for almost every user. Yeah. And I would think there would be something, it would be like, well, he did that. That was really smart. He could see right away, like, well, we want that. But no, every decision, it's bizarre. So I'm like, I'm not gonna be like, well, you made space like, but he's never said anything. I've listened to a bunch of his interviews. He's never said anything. I was like, that was even intelligent.
Oh, he said lots of intelligent stuff. I remember.
Like what?
Okay, for example, I believe he was on Joe Rogan, but he was someone. They had asked him what he thinks about flying cars, and he just broke it down. He said, "Look, when you look at a drone, for example, right, a small drone, and when you fly it into the air, it makes quite a bit of noise, right? So, if you look at a flying car, how big that is, think about how much noise that's going to make to get it off the ground. Based on the amount of noise that it makes, it's not feasible to put these in everyone's garage because every time you fire it up, your neighbors are going to be woken out of their sleep and so forth."
Fiction writer with a
no, but this is actual physics. This is a question of actual physics.
He didn't say anything physics on Joe Rogan. Nothing.
This may not have been I'm saying this may not have been Joe Rogan, but this was an actual interview that he did where he broke down flying cars.
Related to physics. That was all science fiction shit that any basic science fiction person
we're not talking about science fiction.
There's
the amount of noise that a certain number of fans make is not science fiction, it's basic physics.
No, I'm saying any basic science fiction writer could conceive of that. He didn't say anything there that was complex that like, you listen to some people and you're like, oh shit, that person really knows what the fuck they're talking about.
Elon Musk really knows what he's talking about. PayPal.
You're
Tesla,
naming a company that he was part of a group. You can't say, point to something he said that you were like, oh shit, that was really smart. Noticing that wheels will make a lot of noise when that's not intelligent.
Not wheels, fans.
The fuck? That's not even intelligent.
Okay, I'd have to reference some of his other interviews. I've always been a big fan of Elon Musk.
I don't even know why, because he fucking made a lot of money.
I use his products. I love, Tesla's been my favorite car by far. I don't even look at other cars. And I can afford, if I wanted to buy a Rolls Royce, I could buy a Rolls Royce. But I've been buying Teslas for the last 8 years.
Okay.
They're just better cars.
Okay.
Better engineered. They work better.
Okay.
They're faster. They're more intelligent. They do auto drive better. Like the whole nine.
Okay.
There's someone at the head of that company that made that happen.
Okay. Sure.
You had mentioned, you had predicted that Drake was going to lose to Kendrick.
Of course. I mean, of course. How could you, they're not even in the same category.
I mean, it was somewhat close until Not Like Us came out. Meet the Family was a strong song.
It is so pathetic that you would say that it was close at any point. No, it was never close. It was never close. Nobody who is actually dealing with what is happening in hip hop could reasonably, except for like Mal or something, like fucking super Drake stan, could be like, it was never close. No, there's Drake's music in this conversation was so junior compared to what Kendrick was doing. Like, we're not even they weren't even having the same conversation. There was one brother in London who was really smart, man on the street interview. He said, Drake is talking to us and Kendrick is talking to Drake. And I thought that was a really brilliant reduction because Drake was kind of like, and with Schmaltz, hey, you guys, get a load of this short guy. And Kendrick is like, you're a horrible person. You're not really American. You're not really African-American. Stop saying the N-word. You're not Tupac. Tupac is turning over his grave that you have his... And saying this in incredibly complex ways and making deep and memorable and valuable songs that will outlive the... Even when the battle is going on, I'm like, oh, Kendrick will go on tour and do all these songs. Will Drake be doing any of these songs on tour next year or the year after? Hell no. He's not doing Family Matters. He's not doing push-ups when he goes on tour. Like,
Kendrick's definitely doing Not Like Us.
These 100%.
Are not.
These are. I mean, like, it would be the notion of like just even putting these two in the same sentence is disgusting, which is part of what Kendrick is getting at. That like, I am a serious, real MC. You are not. So just stay in your fucking place. I mean, like, they're not even doing the same thing. Drake should be battling with like R&B singers, right? Because there's no rapper that he should be battling with. It's embarrassing. I mean, Kendrick is one of the great MCs of his generation and arguably of all time. And before the battle, you put him top 5 all time, people would argue with you. Now you put him top 5 of all time, people are like, maybe not my idea, but I'll accept. It is my idea. But like other people be like, I respect it. Even if they don't agree with it, they gotta respect it.
Well, I actually did a poll today. I said, what's the worst diss song of all time? By worst, I mean just the least impactful and, so forth. Drake, The Heart Part 6.
The Heart Part 6 for sure.
J. Cole, 7-Minute Drill.
Okay.
Nicki Minaj, Bigfoot. Jay-Z, Super Ugly.
Okay, so
good list though, right?
well,
good list.
Super Ugly is a problematic addition. The rest of them fine.
The reason why I chose Super Ugly was because I felt like that came out after Ether, right? Mm-hmm. And I felt like it was such a letdown after what Ether did that you have to put it in that worst category. Although it was a pretty good song and people, oh no, that should be, a lot of people saying that shouldn't be in the list. Considering the impact of Ether, and that's the follow-up to Ether, that's why I put it in there.
Well, the word impactful, and what does the word impactful mean? Did Super Ugly change the culture? Did it get played in records? Did it make people go, oh, Jay-Z actually won this battle? Like, no.
No. That's what I'm saying.
Did it get played? No.
No.
I still listen to Super Ugly.
Yeah, it's a good song.
It's a great record.
Yeah, but
for something that he spat out because the Takeover comes out and Ether is like 6 months later. Yeah. Super Ugly is the next day. As soon as Jay-Z heard Ether, he went to the studio and made Super Ugly that night. And he does in that song what we do in battling. I dissed you. I got your girl. Blah blah blah. Like
babies in the car, condoms in the baby seat. Yeah, there was some stuff in there, but
Ether. Where's the true Jay-Z diss?
Yeah, there's a lot of hearsay and half truths.
Rockefeller was gay. He wasn't. He died of AIDS. He like what? You guys are like.
Didn't Rock Hudson die of AIDS?
No, Rockefeller. He's like the guy, not Rock Hudson. He's talking about Rockefeller.
Oh, okay. So he messed up on that.
But
okay.
I mean, like, most of the things that Nas says about Jay and Ether are not true.
Correct.
So now I'm like, so how did he win with a song of stuff that's not true?
Well, Kendrick did the same thing. He called Drake a pedophile all throughout Not Like Us, and there's really no proof that Drake is a pedophile.
Well, there's no legal proof, right? Nobody is charging Drake in a court of law at this time, right? And I don't know that will ever happen. But people did come up with a lot of extremely suspect things that he said over the years, where he is giving way too much attention to girls who are under 18, right? Many, many times in his music and his project, he's showering and like, that's like, dude, what do you do? Now, do I really think the guys that, but those are two different things, right? I mean, like Kendrick built a whole argument about him that wasn't really based on that. It was based on you're not African American. You don't really get this culture, right? That you would make an AI Tupac record.
Right, but there's also the fake daughter thing. There's a lot of lies that Kendrick said about Drake that just ultimately were not true.
I mean,
so you can't say that, yes, the stuff that Kendrick did say about the Atlanta and African Americans, that was very impactful. And the Not Like Us became like a catchphrase, you know? People start calling me a colonizer instead of calling me a culture vulture because of Kendrick, right? I understand the impact of that record, but there are also a lot of lies sprinkled in there, just like Nas had lies about Jay-Z.
I mean, the entire song, I mean, it's not even close. The entire song, you're gay. Like, I mean, like, that is a huge theme of that record.
Right.
You cannot play Ether now. Right? I mean, Ether does not age well at all. It's an extraordinarily homophobic record.
Right, but it became a verb. If you got Ether,
no, I understand
it's like you got Ja ruled. Look, there are certain things that became. If your record becomes a verb, then you've done something.
You have, and you know what? You know, part of the situation there was that Nas had been the king of New York before Jay-Z arrived, right? With Illmatic and his second album, he was clearly like the greatest MC in New York City, without question. And I remember talking to him in a car in Queens. I remember where we were, and he said that he did not care about being the #1 MC in New York at that moment in his life. And I was kind of hurt that he said that, because like the number one MC in New York mattered to me, and it was you. And at that point in his life, he was not him. And he was saying, I am bored with this whole shit. Nobody is challenging me. Being the number one MC doesn't really mean anything if there's nobody else to fight over it with. And I think everybody noticed his creative output got lesser. We're talking album 3 and 4.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, although Stillmatic kind of popped back up, I felt.
Okay.
That was what, album 4?
I think so. But here's the thing, that when Jay-Z was clearly the number one MC in New York, and he disses Nas, right, who hasn't been part of that story in a minute.
Yeah, Stillmatic was 5, by the way. Nostradamus was 4, so you're right.
So that's
yeah,
what I'm saying.
You're right.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
Nostradamus was a low point. Yes, you're right.
So there was this energy. We root for the underdog, right? Like Nas, the former champion, comes out of basically nowhere to fight back against Jay-Z and punches him right in the face. I mean, like, to stand up to Jay-Z just as an MC level was a big thing at the time. Like, there are very few people who could have even done it, right? And like, you can't question, like, he stood toe to toe. The record is clearly like, you know, I fathered your style. I was here before you. Don't forget that I'm the man. Like, okay, yeah, like Nas is back. And then when he gets to talking about Jay-Z, it's like, you named your company after somebody who died of AIDS, and you keep sucking Biggie's dick, and you and Jay and Dave, like, what has happened? What happened? The first verse, you setting up, I'm the man, don't ever forget it. The second verse is like, now I'm gonna diss Jay, and I'm like, so it's a bunch of homophobic stuff? That's what you got, right? You know what Jay-Z did? He made us think that Nas's early career sucked. That's some Inception shit. Right? You're on a one hot album every 10-year average. Like, and we repeated that. Like, that line was hot in the streets. The God makes one album every 10. That's insane. But he made us believe that. Uchi Wally, you had the worst verse in the whole fucking song. I mean, like, Takeover is hard. I heard the Takeover. I don't know if I told you did I tell you the poker story before?
No.
So I was doing this big cover story on Jay-Z. I hung out with him on and off for like a month. It was a lot of fun. He invited me, he just would call and be like, yo, we're doing this, we're doing that, we're going to I should tell you the Hamptons story too. We're doing this, we're doing that. And obviously it's not Jay-Z himself calling, it's Jana Fleischman, who we love, who's calling me like, you should go to the Trump Tower tonight around 8, 9 o'clock. I'm like, great. Like, I don't need to hear anything else. I'm there. So I get there, and he's playing poker with a bunch of guys. Leor was there, John Maneely was there, maybe a couple other people. Michael Kaiser, great dude, he was there. So there were some industry guys and some street guys, right? And he had a cassette, and he played me the Takeover, and my jaw was on the ground, because I'm like, you're like saying their names? Are you gonna like bleep out their names? And he looked at me like I was crazy, like, no, like, this is the record. Like, and I'm like, wow, you about to start a fight with that shit. Like, all right, let's go. Now, one of my heroes as a writer was George Plimpton, and his whole shit was to immerse himself in the story. Like, I'm going to be with the Detroit Lions, play quarterback for the Detroit Lions, and thus write about them, right? I think he played hockey with the Boston Bruins, right? And like wrote about that. So I'm like, I want to be in the story, right? So now Jay-Z and the guys are playing poker. I'm like, yo, like, let me in the game. Now, I don't really know how to play poker. I'm not good with cards. And I am also by far the poorest person in the room.
Easy.
But like, let's go. So now it's like 8, 9 guys sitting around a table. The game is called Guts. They deal you 2 cards. There's no flop. You decide, face down, you decide just looking at your cards and other people's faces whether or not you're gonna stay in the hand or not, right? And we're gonna go in order, right, and that's important, right? Because you're looking at other people, right? Like he only stays in when he's got it, so I'm gonna drop out. You're wild, right? So I don't care that you like these sorts of things, right? And like Jay-Z is really good at reading people and noticing little body language. He almost never loses a hand the whole night because he's noticing like, oh, Lior only goes in when he's got it. So if Lior's in, I'm out. But you, I could see, oh, I saw you smile. I see your body language. So like, I'm not that good at these sorts of things. So I'm not noticing the things, but later I'm realizing, like, oh, Jay-Z noticed this and that's why he had this outcome. But I did want the interaction with him, right? So, you know, part of the thing with this game, which they called Guts, was that if you stay in the hand and you lose, you have to replace the pot.
Okay.
And the buy-in would be, for each hand would be something stupid, like 100. Like you had to kick in 100 just to get in the hand, and then the big blind would be more than that. But the pots would easily be 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. So like 4,000, whatever. So like if you lose, you gotta, so, you know, your boy was fighting. About midnight, I was down like $4,000. And John Maneely was staking me because, you know, they were trying to be nice and let me keep playing. But, you know, it was like, damn, like, you're a fucking idiot. Like, you're fucking paying to do the story. Like, you're not gonna be able to make rent next month. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? My God, you're such an idiot. But I did catch a lick. I had a side bet with Kaiser and somebody else. So I was like, okay, what we get on this next hand, and then the real pot, I got 2 aces. So I took down both those pots. And then like 20 minutes later, I got 2 aces again, 1 again. So now I'm like up several $1,000s and I'm chilling, right? I'm like, okay, it's like 2 in the morning. I'm like, I'm not gonna be broke tonight. Like, let's go. And then Jay-Z was in the hand and I was last to act. And he was the only one who was staying in. And I'm like, well, this is like such a great situation because now I'm alone in the hand with Jay-Z, right? Who I can write about. Like, this is like a juicy moment. Also, I had 2 jacks. So I'm like, there's only, what, 3, 4 hands that could beat me, right? Ace, king, queens, right? There's only 3 hands that could beat me, right? Did I have 2 jacks? I had 2 jacks. No. I had 2 10s, right?
There's 4 hands that could beat.
Right, so there's only 4 hands that could beat me, right? There's 8 guys in the room, right? Like, what's the likelihood that he could, like, I mean, if I was actual poker player, I would know the likelihood of you having it, but like, I'm like, it's gotta be low, right? And I'm in the hand with Jay-Z. So before I went in, because he was already in, and I'm like, if I beat you, I'm gonna put it in the story. And he's like, but will you put it in the story if you lose? So I put down my cards like, yeah, what's up now? 2 10s. And he looks and he goes, That's all he said. I'm like, what the fuck does mean? And he starts raking and he puts his hand down like, and he's got 2 jacks. And I'm like, what the fuck, you beat me by 1, like for fucking thousands of dollars, like. But it was so great for the story, right? To have this moment where we were like hand to hand, head to head in this game. Later that night, he and Kevin Liles did like 1 hand face off for $10,000 that Jay-Z won, and he wins the hand, and he's standing on the table like he just hit a 3-pointer to win a playoff game. He's like, yeah, and everyone's like cheering. Ah! That was wild.
How much money did you lose?
I ended up making $5,000 that night.
Okay.
I walked out with $5,000 and I went and I bought a Tag Heuer, a Steve McQueen Tag Heuer.
There you go. I used to have one of those back in the day.
Within that sort of, this is kind of funny. So within that hanging out with Jay-Z moment that was going on for like a month on and off, they're like, so they're going to the Hamptons this weekend. Would you like to go to the Hamptons with the crew? Fuck yeah. Go to the fucking Hamptons with the guys. So it's a Hamptons weekend. Okay, great. So what do you wear when you go to the Hamptons? Beachwear, flip-flops, right? T-shirts, whatever, beach shorts. So I show up in flip-flops, right? Like, whatever. Now we're sitting at this 8-person table, and Jay-Z and Dame Dash are at the other end of the table, and I'm sitting across from Aaliyah, right? And I'm trying to talk to her, but she's extremely shy, right? And her voice is very quiet and high. So it's kind of hard to hear her. And I'm kind of throwing out little, how you doing? How you like your lobster? Like whatever, just to try to get a little conversation going, right? Love your album, whatever. And, you know, and it's hard to get a conversation going. And it's hard to hear her because everybody's talking. So I'm really like working hard mentally to like shut out the rest of the room to hear her. And I know in the background, Jay-Z is telling a story, but I'm not really listening to him. And then I hear in the background, he has suddenly stopped telling a story. And they were laughing, but he suddenly stopped telling the story. But I'm like, I'm not really paying attention. I'm trying to talk to Aaliyah. And now I hear Dame talking really loudly, and everyone is guffawing as if he's this major comedian. And I'm going, what is going on over there? So now I've shifted my perspective over here just to try to read the room and understand what's going on. And I'm not saying anything, but I'm just trying to vibe like what's going on. And they're giving me this look like, welcome to the conversation, asshole. And I'm like, what the fuck is happening? And so I'm listening and I'm vibing. Jay-Z was telling a story about somebody else. And the punchline of the story was, and the nigga was wearing flip-flops. And then he realized I was wearing flip-flops, so I might be embarrassed by his punchline. So he suddenly stopped. But then they realized he's not even listening. So then Dame is like, what do you do when somebody is making fun of people wearing flip-flops and you're wearing flip-flops? You pretend to be silent and like you can't hear, like the roach when the light comes on. So he's roaching me like this. Well, I'm trying to hear Aaliyah. So it was quite funny at my expense when I finally realized, oh, you've been having this whole thing about he's not listening to us on purpose. And I'm like, well, yeah, but not because I'm embarrassed, because I'm trying to hear Aaliyah. So that was kind of funny. Yeah, around that time, me and Dame and Jay and Aaliyah were in a helicopter going from Brooklyn to Manhattan. And it was about 10 p.m. and there was a fog going on, and we're like over the East River, and it is pitch black, and I cannot see a thing. I can't see my hands, right? When I'm with these sort of people, I have a pen and a pad in my hand all the time. I'm not pretending like I'm hanging out with you. I'm constantly ready to write a note and want, like, everyone like remember, like, I am the reporter. Like, if you say something, you know you said in front of the reporter. He was not pretending to be part of the crew. So, understanding that is my role and status as the reporter, when I'm like, you know, it's super dark in this helicopter and I can't see anything and I'm kind of scared, I can't really say anything. I can't be like, guys, I'm scared. I'm like, maybe this is normal. They rock in helicopters. Like, you know, I got to be cool and just roll with it, right? So I'm kind of like getting scared, but like, whatever. I mean, like, there could be something like an inch away from us. We cannot see it, right? And like, Aaliyah barely talks, right? She's shy and she's quiet, so she's not gonna say anything. And Jay-Z is too cool for school. He's never gonna admit that he's scared, so he's not saying anything. So I'm vibing like, they should be scared because I'm scared because it's fucking dark as fuck. But nobody is saying anything. I'm kind of clocking like, she ain't gonna say anything. He ain't gonna say anything. And when I started to vibe about Dame, he turns to the pilot and he's like, can you fucking see? Like, really rude, but like necessary. And the pilot's like, oh, sorry. And like, he could see, and he like flicked the light and then turned on some lights, and then suddenly it was brighter for us, but it was like, okay. And then Jay-Z turns to me and he's like, oh, I bet you were scared. I'm like, what the fuck? I was fucking scared. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? You're like, you weren't scared. So, you know, he likes to like make fun of you, have fun at your expense. It's all in good fun though.
I know you have to go soon, so last question. This is one you're not ready for. You actually had me go over some of the questions beforehand, but I left this one off.
Oh boy.
One of my Vlad TV YouTube members, because occasionally I'll say that a guest is coming to the show and I'll ask for questions. A guy named Hosey Nation 3.0. He said, ask Touré if he'll finally admit that he is Black Conseco from Twitter years ago. A lot of people still think that was his burner account.
Wow. I do remember that whole thing. I do remember there was some weird coincidence, like something happened like at the same time that sort of fueled it, like Black Conseco stopped and I had tweeted like right after he stopped and like, no, I had never had anything to do with Black Conseco. I mean, like, that was a long time ago. I could admit it if it was, but no, I only, like, look, I'm Gen X. Having one Twitter account was a lot.
Yeah, me too.
Right?
Yeah, I don't have burner account.
Right? I have one Instagram account, right? I have one TikTok, right? Like, having two and you have to switch emails and, like, that is too much for us, right? That's some millennial shit, right? So, like, no, I never had any second Twitter account.
There you have it. Touré, always a pleasure when you come in, man. I like how you push back. People accuse me of trying to, run the show with these interviews, but when you came in, you would, none of my opinions stuck if you didn't believe in them. So I like that. I like the back.
Good.
I like the back and forth we had today. It's what it is, man. You have your show.
Yes, I have my podcast Touré show, and I'm doing a lot of content on my Substack now. It's called Culture Fries by Touré. We're talking a lot about what's going on now, what's going on in the past, in culture. It's like a magazine that I alone am running. And I think like it makes a lot of sense. Like you get a magazine and there might be like 10 writers and like 8 of them you don't care about and 2 of them you really like. And like, well, what if you just had a magazine from somebody you actually fuck with? Like, well, if you like my reporting and my writing, come fuck with my Substack.
That's what it is. Touré, man. Until next time.
Thank you.
Peace.